Good evening. Thank you for all joining us this evening. Really appreciate you spending some time with me and with my colleagues to learn a little bit more about essay writing. So my name is Lindsay Monazo. I'm a director of admission, and behind the scenes, helping with all of the questions that you all have, I have two of my wonderful colleagues, Kaya and Reggie, and so they'll be helping out with some of the operational activities and certainly fielding a lot of your questions. We are going to use the Q&A function, not the chat. And so please make sure to put your questions there. And we've also deactivated the hand raising functionality for the session. But if there are questions that you all want to have answered live, or Kaya and Reggie tell me that I'm going to answer live, we will have those handled at the end. So again, thank you all for being here this evening for some information on essay writing. All right, see if my slides advance. Great, they did. So a little bit more about me, just so you know, sort of context of who I am. I've been working in higher ed for over 16 years. I just started my 12th cycle at the University of Richmond and hit the road next week. So I've read lots of essays. They're my favorite part of the application. I really like the stories that students have to tell. I'm a Taurus, so I'm stubborn and loyal at the same time. I love running around Richmond, and I dropped in a few book recs as well. These are some recent faves, so if you want to check those out, I highly recommend. All very different, but all excellent. So reading is something that I really do enjoy, so your stories are things that I look forward to. A couple other need to know things: who we are as a university. I'm sure you all have some familiarity with the University of Richmond. That's why you are here this evening, spending some time with me. But some basic facts and figures here. So top 25 liberal arts university. We've got just over 3,100 undergraduate students hailing from all over the world and most states in the US. We've got a good average class size. Faculty to student ratio. Number that's not on this slide is that 99% of our classes have fewer than 40 students, so very much an intimate discussion-based setting for all of our classes. You'll also see some other stats and figures there. I do want to point out with this slide that these are our numbers, right? These are the rankings. These are some of those fast facts that you get, but there is so much more to the University of Richmond than just these numbers. Just like for our applicants, there's so much more to you than the numbers on your transcript and your test scores. And so keep that in mind as we're talking about application review and what comes next with getting to know more about Richmond. I'm going to try my hardest not to say these words. These are buzzwords that get talked about a lot when giving advice around the application. So be your authentic self, write something that you're passionate about, be genuine, which I did not know how to be really any of those things at 17 or 18. And so I think it's a lot to ask that in 650 words that you be authentic, genuine, and passionate. So I will probably say them throughout this presentation, but know that these are not must-haves as a part of the essay writing process. Also, to give you sort of just a little bit more of an overview of our approach at the University of Richmond to reviewing applications, we are committed to holistic application review. And what that means is the whole application, the whole person. So not just what is your GPA, what is your number of APs, what is your test score, but looking at the information that you provide in sort of the common sections of the application that you might use. We are looking very closely at that academic information to ensure that you would be successful in the academically rigorous environment at the University of Richmond. We're looking closely at your activity list and what you do in your time outside of the classroom. Test scores are optional, so for those of you applying to enter in fall of 2024, you can choose whether or not you'd like to submit testing. You just simply answer a question on the application of whether or not you would like us to consider test scores in our review of your application. So pretty straightforward question, just answer yes or no. And then what your teachers and counselors have to say about you. But really the crux of what we're going to talk about today is what you have to share, who you are and how that comes through and rounding you out as a three-dimensional person that's so much more than the factors that are presented elsewhere in the application, but really who you are and allowing you to showcase yourself for the admission committee. So all of these things come together in concert. We do multiple stages of our review process. So we have first readers are our territory managers. So I have the privilege of reading parts of Connecticut and Colorado and Wyoming and Montana. And I know Kaya gets to read Ohio and Kentucky and a few other states. She actually has quite a few more states. Reggie's in New Jersey right now, so he gets to read Northern New Jersey. And so you get a specialized person in our office who really gets to understand where you're coming from and your educational environment as well. But to the point of this presentation, the college essay. So there are a couple of things that the essay allows you to do in the application to help us understand who you are. It really allows you to personalize the application. This is the part that at this point you have the most control over. Your course selection, the grades that you've received in 9th grade through 11th grade, those things are all done. The impression that you've made on your teachers, those are things that are reporting what has happened. And this is where you have the ability to take your application now and make it reflect who you are. So this is really your opportunity to put yourself into the application as much as possible. This also is a great gauge of your writing ability and style. And I'll talk a little bit about this more later. We are not expecting perfection. We are expecting proofreading, but we're not expecting perfection. It's very hard to share perfection in 650 words or less. So just keep that in mind. But it also allows you to, as you see, share your ambitions, interests, experiences, your personality, passions. That little buzzword got slid in there in terms of the list, because if you do have a passion, absolutely feel free to showcase that in your college essay. It's a great opportunity to really make this about you. These are the essay prompts for the Common Application, and you'll see that I've taken the liberty to highlight some phrases and words in all of the different questions. So I'm not going to go through and read all of these to you, but I hope you see the pattern here with what I've chosen to highlight in red. Sounds like you, your story, your thinking, motivated you, understanding of yourself, or a topic of your choice. This really is about you. And all of these prompts, as well as other prompts, both our supplemental essay prompts, really are there as a guide for you to be able to start reflecting on some of these things, to share your story, to share who you are with the admission committee. And for a place like Richmond that's highly residential, and a lot of our students are really involved, and there's a lot of class participation that's expected, and a lot of our students do internships and research. There's that community aspect. So it also helps us understand who you will be in the context of that community, which I realize is a lot of pressure, but also is your ability, again, to really showcase what it is that you want to share with us about you in this process. At the University of Richmond, we do have our supplemental prompts. So as a requirement, we do ask that you submit the essay for either the Common Application or the Coalition application. We accept both applications. It's up to you which one you choose. The prompts for the Coalition are somewhat similar to what the Common App prompts are that I just shared. But we as an institution also require that you answer a secondary prompt for us. Again, this is about 350 to 650 words. That's not a limit in terms of you have to submit exactly 350 words to be able to submit your application, or you have to write at least 650, or if you're 4 over, we're not going to continue reading. But that's a guide of approximately how long this essay should be. So it's not really a short answer, it really is an essay. And we want you to get to these 3 questions. And so these, again, are asking you to look at yourself, but also Richmond with these prompts. And so these prompts tell you a little bit about who we are and what we value and what we're hoping to learn from you through your essays. And so take advantage of thinking through our Richmond specific essays and how that might play in conjunction, in concert with your common application essay or coalition application essay to really help us understand overall who you are. Big tip here, please don't submit the same essay for both. That is a pretty significant red flag for us in terms of your level of interest and the time that you put into the application. Certainly if there are similar themes or ideas that you'd like to address in both essays, totally fine. Please just don't verbatim copy and paste the same essay for both submissions, because that shows us that there's maybe not really a ton of interest in reflecting on how you fit at the University of Richmond and what you want to share about how you will contribute to our community and how your values align with ours. So how do you go about writing this, not perfect, but representation of yourself so that we understand who you are as a person and who you'll be in our campus community? So here are a couple tips of just ways to get started. Sometimes it's the easiest thing to do is just start writing. It doesn't have to be perfect from the get-go. You don't have to start addressing a prompt immediately, but just start writing down some of your thoughts. If you've been a journaler, if that's a word, if you've journaled before in your life, that's a great place to start. Maybe looking back on some of the things that you've written about, some of the things that you've expressed, hopes, fears, dreams, hobbies, checklists, sort of whatever those consist of. That's a great place to start. If you're not a journaler and you haven't ever done that, just writing down a few things about, what do you hope to get out of college? What do you really value as a person and as a classmate and as a student? What are some things about you that are maybe not unique, but certainly make you who you are? And just jot some of these down. Some of these sort of sketchy drafts, you might get some ideas and some, turns of phrase later down the road. So don't discard any of that. It's good to sort of keep your drafts and records so that as you're refining and rebuilding and rewriting, you can go about that. Definitely make sure that when you're thinking about a topic to address, whether that's one of our Richmond questions or one of the Common App prompts, which resonates with you? Like what are you actually drawn to? What is part of this that when you read that question, you have an instant reaction and an instant idea of, I could address this in this way. Again, that doesn't have to be your final paper or final essay. You can certainly pivot and change your mind and change your draft throughout. But if something doesn't resonate with you, it's going to be a lot harder to write about that subject than necessarily something does. And that's also a great tip when you're looking at other supplemental essays. If there's not something that really resonates with you, how does that potentially align with how you might fit with that college or university if there's sort of nothing you can connect to in what they're asking of you? Definitely keep attention to the fact that this is your story. So it's very easy to sort of go on tangents about other events or other people. And I'll talk about this again in a minute. But make sure that you're centering this process around yourself and about what you want to share with me as your reader, with Kaya as your reader, with Reggie, so that we can understand who you are. So I'll leave you to take in a few more moments to review that slide. And then we'll move on. Also gives me a chance to take a breath. So a few things that I say we, but generally I also really like. So give yourself enough time to write, rewrite, proofread, do revisions, ask someone else to read it, maybe ask a second person to read it, maybe take some of that advice, maybe not, depending on where you want to go with this essay. But make sure that you're giving yourself time in this process to revise and proofread your essay. A good college essay is not something that you sit down, knock out in one sitting, and submit and is successful. Sometimes also, even when you've proofread something over and over and over again, someone else still finds that one little mistake because you're too close to the material, you're too in it, and you understand what you're trying to say. So maybe even read it aloud to yourself before you share it with anybody else, so you can see, like, does this make sense? Are there any glaring grammatical or word choice errors that come up? These stories about you, whether they're big or small, are great. We love stories. I listed my favorite books. I said I like the essays. I like the stories. Provide enough detail so that we understand what's going on, the who, the what, the why, the where, the when, but we don't need every little piece of minutia. Remember, you do still have a limited amount of space to address the prompts. And when we're reading 700-800 applications a cycle and a season, even an extra 2 paragraphs makes it that much longer, which can make us lose our attention. And if it's not cohesive and essential to the essay, it helps it get a little bit, could make it get a little bit lost. Definitely learning about your process is about your thought process. It's not, here's how I decided to write this essay. Here's my approach to this essay. Sometimes those essays are successful, but more often than not, we learn more about essay writing than we do about you. So think about thought process when it's approaching research projects, approaching relationships, understanding who you are and your place in the world. Think about your thought process around what makes you tick. Ensure that you're answering the prompt. If it's a fantastic essay that does nothing for the prompt, sometimes I think maybe this was something submitted for an English paper, or maybe this was something that was for another college, because it doesn't address the prompt or any of the prompts. And I'm not really sure what the intention is of sharing this essay. So if you're setting out to answer a specific question, like one of the Richmond questions, make sure that you're actually answering the prompt. And then that can be apparent in a reading of the essay. That shows us that, as you say, you understood the assignment. So these are some things that really hit well when reviewing an application, or an essay rather. Things that sort of fall flat, just straight retelling of your activity list. These are things that are very important to you, and they shape who you are. If there's something that you want to pull out of there and expand on a little bit, you only get about 250 characters to explain what your activities are, and that's about the length of a tweet. And so that's not a lot of space to really get into what is it that you're doing. And some activities do require that you spend a little bit more time explaining exactly what it is. Also, pro tip on activities, please don't use acronyms that no one outside of your school knows, just as an aside. So if you want to pull something out of your activity list and emphasize that and build off that, that's great. But if it's just another straight summary of here are all of the things that I've done in high school and why they matter to me, that's not as compelling as an essay. It's also really easy to sort of fall into this McEssay category, where, insert activity taught me hard work, perseverance, and leadership, whether that was a sport that you played, a performance, a position, and getting into that sort of trying to hit all of those bases with that one thing. Go beyond sort of that simple base level scope, really tease out what it is about that activity that really means something to you and resonates with you, or how that's impacted who you are or changed who you are. and that will make for a much more successful essay. So this next one, I fully admit we are sort of guilty of almost asking you to do, which is trying to solve the world's problem in 650 words. So one of our prompts is to address social injustice at a global or local scale. Pretty weighty, but really focus on the tangible. And so, probably in a 650 word essay, you're not going to come up with all the ways that we could heal the climate crisis or address the climate crisis or sort of whatever issue you'd like to tackle. But there are still things that you can indicate that are tangible that you are doing or that you'd like to enact or that you've seen happen that you can address in that essay. So we're not asking you to take these huge, immense worldly problems that haven't been solved heretofore and solve it in a 650 word essay. But if you're addressing a prompt like that, make sure that you're providing some tangible information about what you've done to make this sort of global issue, bring it sort of a little bit more local. Please don't focus too much on someone else. One of my former colleagues loved to joke that it was a great essay about grandpa. I learned a lot about grandpa. I'd love to admit grandpa, but I learned nothing about the applicant. So if you're talking about someone who's been really influential in your life, that's fantastic, but make sure that it's still centered in you and who you are and not just sharing about that other person. It's great to see how those things work in tandem, but if it's just simply about someone else, that doesn't share with an admission committee who you are and how you fit with that prompt or with that university or with a value set. So make sure that you're focusing on who you are when also relating to someone else. Please don't try to force it. If you're not a poet, if you're not naturally a dry, sarcastic wit, if you're not someone who plays with prose and has a certain writing style, the college application essay is really not the place to try that, because it's apparent that that's not your natural style and it can feel a little bit jilted. So if you're not funny, or if you're not a funny writer, like I'm not a particularly funny writer, I'm not going to try and write a funny college essay. So you can get caught up in this idea that it has to be gimmicky and it has to be attention catching, but a good essay will grab someone's attention more than someone who's trying to force a writing style or a format that just really isn't a part of who they are. And then this last piece, try to avoid shock value. Again, sort of that you have to get someone's attention. This is your chance to sell yourself. This is the only time that you have to share this piece of information. If that is central to who you are, but if it's something that you're just trying to get attention or rehashing some sort of trauma that might be good to share, but isn't essential to share in a college essay. I think another great piece of advice around your college essay is if you're not comfortable sitting across the table from me and reading it aloud to me, please don't put it in your college application essay, because there's been a whole range of essays that I've read that have been incredibly personal in a way that they didn't have to be to get attention. And it felt like it was for that shock value. So again, if you wouldn't sit across the table from me and read it aloud to my face, maybe not the best thing to put in a college application essay. So those are just some tips. In terms of topics, there is no topic that is the perfect college application essay topic. It's not the topic that matters. It is about how you write the essay. Some of my favorite essays have been about things as simple as family. Who are the people that sit around your dinner table in the evening and what do they mean to you? That's really great insight into sort of who you are as a person. Again, those activity essays that really tease out a certain part of it, going in depth into why something matters to you, great. One of the best college essays I wrote or read was about a young man who had always gone to an all-boys school and didn't know how to talk to girls. And so that was his project before high school, was how do I figure out how to talk to girls? And it was a very simple essay, but it was very compelling in the way that it was written and how it was presented in terms of the totality of the student's application. So you can draw on, a challenging experience like that, or how your favorite music artist songs really resonate with you. The feeling we'll probably see a few Taylor Swift essays this year, courtesy of the Eras tour. So people selecting their era or what have you, which is great. If it's well written, fantastic. I can't wait to read those and enjoy what people have to share. But there's no perfect topic. And as long as you take the time to make it about you and what you want to share, that is what makes a great essay. Okay, I've seen some questions come in. I did include our general admission inbox question, as well as my actual email. So I actually asked my colleagues that if there's one open question that I can answer in person. But if there are other questions, please feel free to submit them in the question and answer section. So the most recent one was, can I use personal talents and gap year experiences to say how I can contribute to Richmond? Absolutely. If you have an experience that you see aligns directly with something at the university, whether it's an activity, a major, philanthropy that the university has been involved in, internships, research, we'd love to hear how you feel that you would contribute to our community, particularly making that connection directly to the University of Richmond. I'll wait for more to come in. A new one, do you always have to open your essay with a story, or can you start by answering the question and then explaining a story? Either. There is no formulaic way to address a prompt. As long as you are getting to the point and we understand sort of where you were going with your answer. I think oftentimes there's pressure to create a specific narrative or have that catchy first line. Those are fine, but so are the essays that are addressing the prompt specifically and talking about what exactly we were asking. Answering live, yes, it's okay to write more than 350 words, but please keep in mind the general word recommendations that we have. So our general recommendation is 350 to 650 words for the Richmond question. And again, we're not going to cut you off if you write 700 words or even 800, but if you're getting up to 3 pages, you might want to do some editing. Right. Another one, if I focus on one specific activity and how it shaped my life, does that still count as retelling my activities list? No, it does not. Because again, you're going a little bit more in depth, and it's not my junior year. I started working for the paper, and that was a continuation of what I'd done with the literary magazine. These are just examples I'm spitballing. If really teasing that out is something that you want to do and showcases who you are. I know we've had some questions around one of our prompts, which is tell us something about you that's not already present in your application. And if there is information about you and your engagement with activities that's not in your application, that's fine. We just want to make sure that you are being provided with space to go beyond what you might have already shared already. What are some essay topics to avoid that have been overused? I think that depends on how you answer a particular prompt and or how you approach writing the essay. So I think an example that's used often by many college counselors, admission counselors, is the sort of standard athletic injury and what you've learned from it. That is an essay that can work very well if it is done well and it addresses you in the essay, not I got hurt in senior year in the senior game and I was really sad because I had to miss the rest of the season. But talk a little bit more about what sort of the outcome of that. Were you able to still play a part on the team? What did that make you rethink playing that sport in general, or make you double down on wanting to come back better and improve and healthier and stronger? And so it's about how you address the essay prompt and showcase who you are. Again, shock value, if you're going for just shock value, I don't advise that. We are humans reading these on the other side, and we don't ask that you showcase your trauma to get into college. So you shouldn't feel the need to do that simply as, well, this is the essay that's going to get me in. You also always read the articles of the essay subject that got this student into all 8 Ivy League schools. And that's probably not the final thing that got them into all those 8 Ivy League schools or whatever. There are probably a lot of other things that are playing into that. So make sure that you're addressing you in the prompt and addressing it well and sharing something with us that we need to understand who you are and how you fit in our community. See, Reggie is answering a question. I believe another question is, can we have access to the recording of this meeting? I believe this will be posted on our YouTube channel. So I'm saying that not with utmost confidence. I know we've posted our past Spinning Your Webs on our university YouTube and admission YouTube channel. So you'll probably also be able to see some past presentations there as well. But we do try to make them generally available. Another question, is it okay to use a humorous tone with some parts of your essay? Absolutely, if you're funny and do it well. And if that's something that you're accustomed to doing in your writing. Again, I'm not someone who is a very funny writer, and so that's not something I would try. But I also never did any sort of satirical writing. I never honed that skill. If that's a skill that you've created and you've been able to craft other successful, funny essays that are humorous, absolutely go for it. I think we all enjoy reading a funny BuzzFeed article every now and then, or at least I do. I'm not going to speak for everybody. Maybe that's not what the youth are doing these days, but I enjoy reading funny things. And if you do it successfully, absolutely feel free to do it. All right, another question came in. How much weight are the essays in your application process compared to your academic achievements? So this goes back to that holistic review piece. So many of the students that apply to the University of Richmond are academically capable of being successful at Richmond. And so how do we differentiate among the thousands of applicants that have very similar academic profiles, very similar course schedules, if they submitted testing, maybe similar test scores? And it's through these pieces that allow us to understand who you are as an individual. And again, the essay is what you have the most control over right now, that you as the person driving this process have the control to craft your essay. So will it be the thing that if you write an essay that completely wows the admission committee and shares insights of who you are and how your academics have played into your life and how you've come to be the person that you are? Yes, it could be that tipping point that brings you over. Again, if we see that you submit the same essay for both the Common App prompt and our question, and there's no effort put into it, it might be something that when we're getting down to that point where we just have to split hairs, not that we ever have, oh, well, there's only one seat left, but when we're having to make those hard decisions about who is a fit for our community, that might be a piece that could otherwise be detrimental. I see Reggie answering another question. Another one came in that said, if I'm an activist and I want to describe my attempts to reflect on and figure out the political process that I'm attempting to reshape, is it a valid essay topic to use? Yes, it is. This is if it's your reflection and your attempt to figure out your place and what you can do, that's absolutely fine. As long as it, again, is not about sort of this is a political structure. Here's all of the information about this political structure, but no actual information on your reflection or your focus or anything tangible that you've interacted or done or taken from or learned from that particular thing. We're not looking for reports that require footnotes. We want your reflection and information and reaction. All right, another person wrote in, should I talk about my exchange volunteer experiences as a way to demonstrate how I aim to support Richmond's community? Absolutely. I think there are great ways to incorporate that into the Richmond question prompt for your Richmond essay, particularly as it relates to your activities, what you did, and how you can connect that with whether or not you are a good fit for the community. Someone said, if I begin my essay with a rear view into my past, which was a bit dark and shaped me who I am today, should I minimize this part of the essay? No, you don't need to minimize it. Because if that is foundational to who you are, that's fine. If it is something that was, some of the examples I can think of sort of gross for the sake of being gross, those are things that don't need to be in essays. And I see that Reggie is answering the next question, which is trauma ever a good idea? And I will hopefully echo what he is typing out right now. You can share things that were traumatic in your essay, but again, for the shock, alongside the shock value, don't feel that you have to share a traumatic experience to stand out in the applicant pool, especially if it's not something you're ready or want to share. You don't have to share it if you don't want to. And I feel like oftentimes there's a lot of talk around let's stand out, and that's a way to stand out oftentimes. But again, if it's not something you're willing and ready to share, and it's not critical as a part of reflecting your application, don't feel that you have to share it. If it's something essential that you really want to share, I'm not saying don't share that, but if it's not something that you're ready to share or want to share, don't feel that you have to share trauma for the sake of it. Another one that asks, is it okay to use non-traditional styles of writing in our essays? Dialogue, non-formal grammar. Yes, it is. Again, if it's something that you're doing well. If this is your first attempt at using non-traditional style, maybe not the best to do. If you're trying to write in the style of E.E. Cummings, but you're not successful at it, it's just going to fall flat. Another question, is there any tip you would give us that would be crucial to have in mind for supplemental essays? Read the prompts and address the prompts. So supplemental essays like those for Richmond or for many other institutions get to a certain point and are looking for a certain question. And in a lot of ways, you can think of them, none of our questions are explicitly, why Richmond? Why do you want to come to the University of Richmond? Why do you fit at the University of Richmond? But there are elements of asking questions to help us understand how you do fit at the University of Richmond and why you might want to come to the University of Richmond and how your values align with ours. So definitely pay attention to the prompts that we are asking, that other schools are asking, to make sure that you're actually addressing those. There's another question. Diversity and where you are from can be a common topic for international students. If I can relate it to my identity and the deeper meaning to the answer to that question, would you say that says enough about me? Yes, if you relate that to your identity and who you are, absolutely. Okay. You all have been a great audience. I appreciate the questions. I, again, appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. I really appreciate Reggie and Kaya for answering so many of your questions behind the scenes while I was presenting. If you've not been in contact with us, you'll be getting information, but don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any additional questions after tonight about essays or the application process at Richmond in general. We do have an open house coming up in October, our Preview Richmond event. So if you've not been to campus and are looking to come, you can go ahead and register for that. And we are out and about all around the country and all around the globe. So if you see that we're in your area, definitely come and say hello to us.